Let me get Katie. Excellent.
30-something.
half, they had to write a one-page summary of the article it's on, and that's the skeleton. And the next thing is they write the first part of that will be 2 weeks, so that's 200 words, and then they write the second part, that's another 200 words. But some people have got like 4 of these. These people but I'm breaking up these. Yeah, having a process like
Hi everyone, welcome. Tonight we're thrilled to welcome Emily Witt, author of Future Sex. Eileen Miles says Emily Witt is our perfectly ambivalent yet somehow smart and hungry guide on this casually lurid tour of female-driven porn, idly pervy webcams, Burning Man, and polyamory. Emily Witt is a journalist and critic who has written for N+1, The New Yorker, and The New York Times. She will be joined by Christian Lorentzen of New York Magazine and the London Review of Books. So let's welcome our guests.
Hi everybody.
Hi.
This is Emily. I'm Christian. Emily is a native of Minnesota, and one of your own was honored today in Stockholm. It was so announced. As a writer of prose, what do you think about, I mean, not that he isn't, he wrote one book of that. What do you think about that?
I was pretty happy. I actually listened to Bob Dylan all day. In my apartment, I listened to Bob Dylan all day long. So, yeah, no controversy here.
Alright, well, congratulations to Professor Christopher Ricks for his long campaign of legitimizing his obsession with Dylan has finally come to fruition. So welcome tonight to the locker room. This is going to be the girls' locker room tonight, and I'm happy to be here. I've never been allowed in before. What do they talk about in the girls' locker room, Emily?
Oh, I mean, you don't want to know. It's too
I've
hot.
always imagined that maybe it's just the the beta males I hang out with, they never like to say, they don't go locker room now. I've always assumed that things were much more detailed on the other side.
Yeah, the girls' locker room is so hot mic that it just never makes it out there.
Yeah.
It's like Hillary's locker room banter.
Yeah. Let's hope the
Not
NS...
safe for work.
So, I actually was lucky enough to get to work on some of this book with you, in a couple of pieces that appeared in the LRB about internet dating and about Burning Man. And that began at a time before even the magic of Tinder was upon us. And as a flip phone user, I tend to reside in the year 2005. I'm quite happy to stay there forever. If I wrote a book, it might be called, I would never write this book, but it might be called Past Sex. So when we started working on that book, you had just flown out to San Francisco. Tinder was not yet invented. And you said to yourself, what would I do tonight if I was a man?
Yeah.
A man would go to a bar alone. So where did things go from there?
Yeah, I went to a bar alone. It was an unsatisfactory experience. Opened up my phone and started. They didn't have Tinder, but they had OkCupid Locals. Probably it's one of those things like Friendster. Nobody remembers now, but yeah, and that night I went on a date with a Brazilian. We made out a little bit. I went back to his place, but that was it. I wrote about that.
Yeah. You generally, your experience as described in the book tended to be generative of friendships, but not generative of the attractions that occurred in say, at parties or in a known social context.
Yeah.
Yet, do you think that is the generalized case in America nowadays? It seems to me that actually the cell phone and Tinder and other apps. I was sitting at a party with a guy who next to me was in another conversation that I was eavesdropping on, who said, I got 5 apps now that I'm on. And it seems to me that the art of the pickup at a bar has been destroyed by these things. Do you think that's true?
I don't think that's true at all. But I do think, the thing, as some of the readers have pointed out, my experience with internet dating is actually not that eventful. But the thing that interested me in 2013 or I guess the end of 2013, I was asked to write about Tinder for GQ. And it was still new at that point for people outside of college age demographics. And what was so interesting to me as I went about reporting that was everybody asked me what the app was supposed to be for. And the funny thing was everybody wanted to see it as a hookup app because it mimicked the technology of Grindr, which had acquired that reputation. But the reason that Tinder was successful was it made sure that there was nothing on there that made it seem like a sexy app in any way, and the founders would always say things like you can use it to meet tennis partners.
Right.
Like married people can use Tinder to network for work. So it was funny to me that everybody wanted the app to tell them what to do and they wanted the technology to be this like big life-changing thing where now it'd be so easy on a Friday night to just like go out and have sex with whoever you wanted, and like all of the shyness and inhibition would be taken away because you were both on the app and it meant that you both shared this expectation.
The concept of the clean, well-lighted room
Yeah.
Or Clean Well Light Space.
Yeah.
That from taken from Hemingway, I believe, who certainly would be on Tinder today if he were around, I imagine.
Maybe.
You know, looking for wives. And somebody to play dress up with. Do you think that has that concept been effective? Is it a good thing? Is it better than the old pre-2003 dimly lit smoke-filled bar?
I mean, one of the things I tried to keep in mind the whole way writing the book was that there's nothing new. There's nothing new in sex, but it's just the way that we think about it and the stories that change. So I don't know.
I have, you know, from my reading of your book, there do seem to be new things, such as things, even words I don't know, and I'm not inclined to Google, such as teledildonics. I don't know what that means.
Teledildonics is remotely operated sex toys. So, like, sex toys that you can operate remotely to, you know, have fun without being in the same room together.
They're sort of like sex drones?
More like, yeah, sure. Yeah, sex, I don't know.
Okay.
Like, if instead of when you got a text message, just your cell phone vibrated, maybe something else would vibrate.
Alright. Wow, with the element of surprise too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, interesting. I'll stick with my flip phone. But there may be nothing new per se, but there are transformations, and those transformations have dates associated with them. What do you think are the, say, 3 or 4 most important dates and events that led up to the state of things that you described in the book?
1992, I would say, which is the year the World Wide Web launched, I guess, and also, I might be wrong about that, but I think.
How soon after that did electronic classifieds come into being?
Yeah, that came into being in '94, I think, and electronic classifieds was the early company that started Match.com, and their idea was they would transform all of the classified sections of the newspaper into stuff on the World Wide Web, and they began with the dating classifieds. And they really set the template for how the industry would be. There were other people doing it at the time, and the reason they were successful is they almost made, a kind of proto-social media profile that has, you know, had your photo, had your likes, had, but the reason, the biggest problem with it was trying to get women to sign up, and to make women, or to encourage women to sign up, they had to do all this stuff, like take away, you couldn't post explicit photos, you had to, or there were questions about family and relationship and religion to make it seem kind of wholesome. And it set the tone of the thing that when you went on an internet dating site, if you just didn't talk about sex in a certain way, which is kind of what I realized was the...
You describe it as going someplace to to eat, and then you just talk about the weather, or what's the metaphor?
it's like, yeah.
It's one of your best lines.
I can't remember
he was handing me X, and I was unhappy because I wanted an umbrella.
Right. It's like, okay, you go to a restaurant and you're hungry, but you're just talking about the weather.
Yeah.
And he handed me a watermelon.
Oh yeah, I did
an umbrella. Yeah, it was, I don't know, metaphor gone wild maybe. But yeah, that was something I came to see as a fundamental absurdity of the whole technology, and frustrated me.
As a fatalist, I was stunned a bit by the level of intentionality expressed and sort of believed in by many of your subjects. The notion that everything that they were doing in the bedroom and on the way there was a matter of an expression of their will and maybe even their whole personality and being. I felt this most strongly in one of my favorite chapters, the one on polyamory, which is really, it reads like very good fiction, and I kept expecting somebody to get murdered at some point. Really, the voice in my head when I was reading about Wes and Elizabeth and Chris. Wes and Elizabeth are a couple that was kind of casually hooking up for a year, and then they finally realized that they were in love on New Year's, and then they decided to be a couple, but also have an open relationship, and then Elizabeth was into this guy named Chris who worked with all of them. Was Elizabeth working at Google by then?
Chris and Wes were best friends.
Yeah, they all worked at Google, which maybe, was it really Google? Or was
It
that
was
fake?
really
Oh, it was
Google.
really Google. Okay, so all these people who go to work in Mountain View in the big, beanbag chairs and stuff, and so Chris, maybe you guys have all read this. Anyway, Chris was like, yeah, I'm down to hang out with you guys and do a threesome, and maybe Wes, I've always had an attraction to you too, and this is kind of sets off a kind of doom spiral, but you love these characters, and I had the voice in my head sort of like where Emily sees these attractive, happy millennials working in tech. I had kind of Werner Herzog up there saying, I see only fear, aggression, desire, and the potential for betrayal. But things really ended up working out okay. They got Wes and Chris eventually had to leave off, and are they happy is my question really.
Yeah, they're happy. And they were happy with the piece too, which
Oh,
surprised
really?
in the chapter. Yeah,
Oh.
it was kind of surprising. But yeah, they, part of it is just my personality. When people are doing something, I have trouble. I don't know. I'm just not somebody that looks at them and says, "That's not gonna work. You guys are." Yeah, that's not me. I'm always sort of like, well, they've figured out so much other stuff in their life. They were like young, really professionally successful. They seem to know exactly what to study and where to go.
Do they have a romance aspect, or do they think of their professional lives romantically?
No, they don't at all.
Oh.
They're really practical people, and that was what was ultimately very different, and kind of why for me as a writer it was fun to hang out with them, because they were so together. They'd never seen, except for Chris, who was kind of...
self-confidence, you say, is the...
He writes poetry.
Okay.
He's a little melancholic. He has that aspect of his personality, which of course I related to, and felt most comfortable around him. But yeah, the other two, Wes and Elizabeth, they're just like optimistic people. I'm sure there's a Myers-Briggs personality that concords with who they are. But so I would just kind of watch them in fascination, because they started dating each other when they kind of admitted to each other that they were in love. They had this really earnest conversation that they were going to be polyamorous, or maybe at the time they just said open relationship. But it wasn't just an open relationship. Like, what they've done is, Elizabeth especially has had, she has multiple partners, so like more than one boyfriend and also girlfriends, and she is able to manage that emotional, which for me would be emotional instability. For her, she's just like able to handle it. So that was one thing. Is part of me was like, oh, they can do this because of their personalities and who they are. But it was also really interesting to be with people that spoke about their intentions in this really earnest way.
Where did they learn to do that, do you think?
I think it had something to do...
And is it a new thing?
I described it as a generational thing. It's like kids that were raised with talk therapy, with, I guess millennials, if you want to call them that, but they're just like really well adjusted. For some reason they didn't feel the need to break rules or rebel, and they always felt like they could, what in another generation would have been acting up, doing drugs, sleeping around, all this stuff, they felt like they could do within their lives of getting good grades and being professionally successful. So that
So
was what was
there's-
surprising and interesting to me.
Was there so any patina of transgression was absent from these activities?
Yeah, definitely. And the whole thing was almost, transgression was an ugly thing that brought with it emotional pain and dishonesty, and it was important to sort of always be honest and talk about your feelings. So that was kind of an amazing thing that I hadn't seen that before.
I've never been to San Francisco, but to me it sounds like a hellish nightmare. But that's just me. There is an anxiety sometimes expressed by you, the narrator in the book, and at times expressed more or less by some of your characters. And the line that I hit on in your last chapter that said it to me was, well, two lines really, they're close together. Where does sex land us in the social order?
Mm-hmm.
And will it land us on the outside of normal? And what struck me about that is that, so is sex in this day and age ever just sex? Or is it always a kind of, does it always have that that connection to the social order and to, therefore, to, I guess, the future?
I mean, I think it is often just sex, yeah, but like I was trying to think of my life in this macro way where I was trying to understand why I was where I was, what mythologies and rules had informed my ideas about how I was supposed to act and how I was supposed to be. You know, and for me that was very much about what I saw as being a good person, being an obedient person. You know, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier about, I applied metrics of success to every aspect of my life, you know, whether it was getting good grades or you know, doing well professionally.
Did you find that any of those mythologies were worth which of those mythologies were worth discarding and which of them ended up having value?
Well, I think the school and professional ones served me pretty well, but I think the sexuality ones were not helpful to me because I felt just like a failure because of something that I ultimately couldn't control, and I was sort of living my life on the plane of I don't know, according to a certain set of ideas that I couldn't will into being or work hard to make happen. Or
So sort of the meritocratic ideology doesn't function in what
love.
Michelle Welbeck would call a sexual marketplace.
I don't like the sexual marketplace. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, or the
Or
romantic. Yeah.
The romantic sphere or marketplace, or what's the proper metaphor, do you think?
What is the proper metaphor? Yeah, the romantic versus the sexual marketplace, where actually you do have a lot of control. And that's kind of like what I wanted to focus on in the book, is the things, you know, that were on the plane of my reality that were possibilities that I had never considered because of who I thought I was.
Now, a parallel development technologically in the same era as internet dating has been pornography.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's been probably one of the fastest moving aspects of tech since 1992.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I mean, it's kind of stalled at, I would
Yeah.
say, but.
Do you think that this revolution has been a good thing overall?
I mean, that was the question that I actually tried to discard in the book, was that was the question that was always being asked in everything I read, and it was totally unhelpful because it was there. You could choose not to watch it, but someone in your life would be watching it, probably your partner. You could explain all the reasons why being for it or against it was a really unhelpful way of thinking about it because it was just there and it was going to affect your life and be a part of your life.
Has it been a boon to certain subcultures of the population, and has it had, do you think, more liberating? Well, I'm just asking different versions of the same question that you just
Liberating. Yeah, I mean, ultimately I concluded yes. After sort of going through all of my objections to it and mapping where they came from, which was very much, if you are a social liberal, your objections to porn are articulated in the terms of feminism rather than Christianity. Or, unless you're super Christian and a social liberal. But for me, it was never a moral question. That wasn't how, I wasn't raised to speak of sexuality as sin or anything. So for me, my objections were all related to an idea of objectification, of degradation, that if you put a certain image into the world of violence against women, that it will result in violence against women, and and all of that stuff, those are all really valid arguments, but to let that be the thing that keeps you from this vast visual repository of information on the internet, which for me was kind of the case. Even though I would have never judged somebody for watching porn or anything. When I looked at it myself, or in this kind of really cursory way, it wasn't. Those were the arguments against it that came to my mind. And then I watched a lot of it, which I write about. Don't even talk about here. And my feelings changed. I came to see it as, a way to, I had not ever, if you'd asked me to Google search the thing that turned me on, I could not have done that. And that was kind of what a whole giant part of the population knew how to do. And I think that gives them, I think that's an important thing to know how to do. I don't know. So it's worthwhile for me to have practiced that. Yeah.
There's another experience that looms large in the book, both for you. It has a whole chapter about it, but that's also an episode for Elizabeth, Wes, and Chris. And it's almost like a magnification of sex itself, in the sense that a lot of the experiences described here almost loom with a more powerful aura in the before and the after. And I'm speaking of Burning Man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Burning Man was a big thing for me.
Do you find that you always carry Burning? Do you find that you always carry Burning Man with you, and that the experience, the sort of pluperfect having had of the experience is in a way more crucial than the experience itself?
No, I've still gone. I've still been going. No, I mean.
Do you get diminishing returns or increasing ones?
It's changed every year. Every year is different. Yeah. Every year the mission of it changes, kind of. Yeah, but.
I don't mean to represent the spirit of quantification here.
But that first year, which I wrote, the first year, so I'll tell that story. I wrote about it. I went thinking I wasn't going to write about it. Actually, really determined not to write about it, because then I wouldn't have fun. So I went, and then the last day I was there, I was just like, oh my god, I have to write about this, and sat down and kind of wrote down everything that happened with a fat marker on a piece of paper, and came back, sold the story to a magazine on spec that I won't name the magazine. They bought it, and then 2 days later they killed it, which one thing was surprising to me during this whole thing is...
If I remember the story correctly, they caught a lot of flack from their advertisers.
Yeah, exactly. So
luckily it landed in the London Review of Books.
Yeah. So, and I actually, tried to sell it to a lot of places, because I just, at that point in my career, I hadn't really published in a lot of magazines, and I was trying to kind of build up that part of my career. And fortunately, the London Review of Books.
I'll always be there
home.
for you.
Yeah. And And so yeah, I hadn't really intended on writing about it. I didn't know if it belonged in the book, but then it was clear that it kind of did as this interlude. And yeah, for me, you know, unfortunately, my biggest regret with the book is not having written a little bit more about my life, even in a kind of really cursory way, and what I was actually doing.
Well, you write about your life a lot, but in a more abstracted way, and less in a narrative, chronological way.
Yeah, so that was one place where I just sort of let go and.
It makes it into a fun game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there's a boyfriend who's been around for a while.
Yeah, gotcha. It's not around anymore.
Hey, well,
Yeah.
love comes and goes.
Yeah.
Fun. Your writing is a lot of fun to read, and I'm wondering, I know a bit about your career. I know that you went to college, and then you worked at a couple magazines, and you worked in Miami, an experience you described in a great piece. And then we worked together at the New York Observer for a while, much later. Where did your prose style really come into form?
Definitely N+1 was a place where I wrote a thing. I was in Mozambique for a year on a Fulbright, and I wrote about that, and I got to do it in this kind of first-person way. It wasn't a memoir, but it was me writing about the things I was doing in a certain register. And then I wrote about Miami in that way. I wrote about Cambridge poetry in that way.
Excellent piece on the followers of J.H. Prynne, who's the subject of an excellent interview in the Paris Review currently.
Yeah, which is
On
exciting.
newsstands upstairs.
Yeah.
An excellent compliment to Emily's piece.
I need to read it.
You
I need to
know,
buy it.
I found it riveting.
Yeah, he's amazing. So that, my editor there was Keith Gesson. He's a really wonderful editor. And Keith's thing is kind of always encouraging you to say a little bit more about yourself than you want to. And that was the place, and it's interesting. I don't think I could have found that voice in any commercially minded publication, because they have, when you write for a regular big magazine, they have a voice they need to uphold for the most part. So that's what I sold the book on the basis of those pieces more than anything else.
So, fun part 2. Did the writing of this book, separate from the writing itself, make the years, I believe there were 4 years of your life that passed as you were researching it,
Yeah.
more fun, more romantic, happier, more sexually fulfilling?
Less fun, more sexually fulfilling, as I kind of learned a lot about myself while writing it. Like, whatever catharsis is in the book is real. It's not a narrative contrivance. That I really came out happier for having done all this. But writing a book sucks, and you have to spend a lot of time by yourself. And that was always a problem. Elif Batuman, one of my favorite writers, has this thing about double entry bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, for Proust, for Boswell, there's always this problem where they need to live, but then they need to write about it. And so you're always trying to, account for, do the accounting on that. So for me, ultimately, I spent most of 2015 alone in a room in Berlin, which was really good, but not a happy time.
Well, let's talk about a few things that you left out of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I understand at one point there was going to be a chapter about celibates.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, or not a lot of time, but I spent some time with they identified as queer. They're a couple, committed couple of Orthodox Christians who practiced celibacy because of their beliefs. And what was interesting about that to me is that that is a very contemporary idea. Like, you can name your sexuality and you know it, and you're not trying to suppress it or hide it, but you're religious and you have a set of rules and you follow them. And what was interesting about that to me is because part of what I was figuring out and trying to figure out and still trying to figure out is how you come up with a set of rules and rules and ethics in the sort of post-religious age, which was kind of an existentialist project too, I
You
think.
think
But
that many of your subjects have sort of transferred religious, faith-oriented impulses into their romantic and sexual lives?
well, there's just a school of thought that's like that says, you know,
Certainly in your
the 2,000 years of Christianity helped us protect ourselves, raise children safely, figure out like how to live all together without having emotional breakdowns every other week. And so these celibate Christians believe that. At the end, it was just they were too anomalous.
Do they have anything in common with the practitioners of orgasmic meditation?
So the practitioners of orgasmic meditation would be the other extreme,
Yeah.
where they're like, we live in a vacuum of rules, like we need to create this like very kind of contained practice that has all these rules that where everybody knows what they're supposed to do, so that you can consider within that how to live your life outside of that. And like there's a sociologist named Eva Luz who says like the whole BDSM thing that happened after 50 Shades of Grey was just because we live in a world where nobody knows their gender roles and like who's top and who's bottom and how they're supposed to act during sex. And so BDSM gave you like this whole script where you could just you had to talk about everything, you had consent, you had these like terms, and one person was in charge and one person wasn't, all of that. I don't know if that's a viable view.
Do you see, obviously we've seen a lot of political changes in the sexual realm in the past decade or so, in society as a whole. That is in a, say, demographic or among a group. Your book is mostly about straight people. But there has been, people have written, I think that the blogger Frederick DeBoer wrote that after gay marriage, the next thing would be legal sanction of polyamorous relationships. Do you see any political transformations coming out of what you went out and saw?
Yeah, that was the part, what I say at the end of the book a little bit is that futurism always has this machine bias, and people think it's about teledildonics, they think it's about virtual reality, they think it's about computers and apps. And actually in science fiction, it's always about envisioning new forms of family, new ways of raising children. And I think, now that 40% of the US population has kids outside of marriage, most of us live years, if not decades, of our adult lives outside of a monogamous relationship in some way. All these, we still need to have families and we still need to feel emotionally supported and we still have kids. So yeah, it's something that's been a little bit frustrating about this election cycle is, we have the first woman candidate and, the future for women has to be a vision of society that is not rooted in marriage. I think that, things like guaranteed parental leave, better healthcare, all this
Are
stuff.
there models elsewhere that we can look to?
Well, I don't know, Scandinavia. I don't know enough about it.
And
That's
they-
always the...
They love Dylan out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very clear across the world right now, or maybe not, in the wealthiest countries, it's very clear that the more patriarchal society is, the more women will opt out of having children. And so Japan, Germany,
Their fertility rates are the lowest.
they're the lowest.
Oh, interesting.
And the more a society punishes you effectively for having a child outside of marriage, the more women will just stop having kids.
Well,
that was interesting to me.
On that note,
Yeah.
we have a lot of people here, and I bet they would like to ask you some questions. So, should we let them at it?
Yeah, sure.
Anybody got a question for Emily? Anyone? Yes.
I am with
Hi, Dan.
Hey. Well, just, you were speaking about Germany just now. I think that that's a similar country to a lot of Scandinavian countries where they actually they give you tons of money to have kids.
Yeah.
And they also give you free childcare and a lot of things that we don't have in this country. But their birth rates are extremely low. So,
Well,
I mean, I don't know if you had, how you think that plays out.
I mean, what I've read about that you would know better if it's true. You know, Berlin is one thing, but the rest of Germany, there's actually a very traditional idea of family, and there's a lot of shame if you don't live your life that way. And I mean, what I read is that there's a lot of pressure if you're a woman to quit work. You know, they don't have kindergarten or something, like, yeah, so you have to kind of stay home with your kid, or, somebody probably knows more about this than I do, but that's what I read as the reason for that. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. So I haven't read your book, but I'm really excited to read it. So each of these experiences you went into, did you go in with the intention of writing about it? And then the second part of that question is, did you find that after a while these experiences just started to find you, or were you actively going out and seeking them?
When I proposed the book, I proposed a sort of third-person cultural history of post-internet sexuality, and I thought it was going to be really straightforward journalism. So going in, but then I kind of had the book deal, and I didn't really realize I didn't know how to do that. So at first I was writing these like histories of these different things, like the history of internet dating, which everybody found really boring. And then, you know, I went out to San Francisco kind of because my lease was up, and I wanted to change, and I also knew that there were certain things that if I stayed in New York, just the fact of having friends here and feeling self-conscious because I had friends here or something, there were certain things I would just never try here or something. Like, I was kind of embarrassed when I started writing the book. I'm still embarrassed, but
You have no reason to be.
thank you.
Stop.
Okay. But yeah, so then when I went out to San Francisco, it was just like, okay, yeah, everything that came my way, I would just go to it. And at first, you know, orgasmic meditation, at first I saw, like, you know, I would just tell everybody when I showed up there, like, I'm a reporter, you know. Yeah.
I'm not like you.
And yeah, then, you know, a few months passed, and I started to realize, like, this stuff was really changing my ideas about myself, so, and there was a lot of encouragement to make the book more personal.
That chapter had one of the sort of kind of low pressure, scariest moments when you describe this man sitting next to you it's 10 in the morning, he's got a coffee cup, he's probably got a lot of whiskey or vodka in
Yeah.
it. He's red in the face, his
Yes.
eyes are, you managed to escape them. Did the book take you into any other literally dangerous territory?
No, I think I was lucky. There isn't, I don't know, I was lucky, I guess, or, I don't know. I don't know. I was cautious.
Good.
Yeah.
Stay safe. Yes?
Hi Emily. It sounds like you've tried a lot of different sex tech, whether it's teledildonics or virtual reality, stuff that probably we haven't tried before.
Yeah.
What's either the craziest experience in the book, not in the book, or one that you think will catch on in the next couple of years?
Or like the best one too.
The
Yeah.
best one. It's funny.
Wow,
I
people
actually
are gonna
haven't
really
tried
love this.
teledildonics because they never really came into existence in any kind of like real way. But I do at home right now have a virtual reality rig. I have a Vive for an article I'm writing. And yeah, so far it's pretty disappointing. Like it's just most of the like pornographic videos are just like 180. It's the same. There's nothing that feels new about it.
I was reading a novel the other day that
Yeah.
had a scene with one of those, and it literally said it could turn the other person into like a dragon. Is that true?
No.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I don't know. Not the one I have. That's what I want. I'm still looking into different. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what's out there. But yeah, I think that far more realistic. I mean, if you look on Tinder right now, language. Polyamory is a word that, as I say in the book, was like coined in the late 80s and early 90s, and it wasn't added into the dictionary until 2006, so that's only 10 years ago. And if you go on Tinder, it's like everywhere, and a lot of people are describing their lives using, I don't know, polyamory is tough. I think it's like a bold lifestyle decision. It's not
Has it
easy.
generated any interesting literature yet? Have people written memoirs?
Yeah, I
or,
can't think of like a
Is there-
book like The Argonauts or something
Right.
that's about that,
or even a book of poetry, or
Yeah, there is a book of poetry by Juliana Spar.
oh right.
Yeah. Or maybe it's not poetry.
What's the title?
I can't remember what it's called, I'm sorry. In the bookstore. Anjali.
It's called That Winter the Wolf.
Oh yeah.
That
But
winter.
I also have a question for you, which is in a way kind of a narcissistic question, but there's like throughout the chapters there's friendship like lurking in the
Yeah.
margins of everything, and in some ways it seems so obvious. Like also talking to my students that they have like prioritized different forms of community making or like intimacy in ways that really put friendships front and center. And maybe it's because I'm reading my friend's book and also experiencing you in this new way, but
Yeah.
it felt to me like it was really on your mind, and it's like, and that you have probably as much developed thought about the relationship between friendship and sexuality and friendship and these sort of breakdowns in monogamous relationships, friendships that cut across sex and not sex and various on that continuum. I want to hear some of them.
Yeah, I mean, that was very much on my mind because, especially when the book started, I was on my own, and even once I had a boyfriend, I kind of knew the state of that relationship and that it wasn't like gonna be the only thing in my life. And so yeah, and this is an ongoing thing about how to feel connected and feel a sense of belonging and feel stable, have forms of commitment that are kind of primary forms of commitment that aren't just marriage. And the reason that I quote Simone de Beauvoir a lot in the book, and I could even have quoted her more, is because that was a group of people, they're criticized a lot and people question their motives and all this stuff, but her and Sartre and their friends, they lived this intentional experiment. And that was kind of, with the polyamorous, with the orgasmic meditation people, their whole thing is friendship. They're like, friendship is the primary relationship. So yeah, I was just interested in how to feel a sense of belonging and a sense of safety and the kind of things that you rely on for family, like if those things can happen outside of biological relationships and outside of marital relationships. I still don't know the answer, but it's something that I think for our generation, people my age, people born in the 80s and people born in the 70s, people born in the 90s, I think it'll be a really major question because we just aren't getting married as much, not having as many children.
Michael, then would be. Okay.
Yeah,
You-
you're first.
You, and then and then we're out. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you could touch upon, when you talk about this in the book, the relationship that methamphetamines and psychoactive drugs had on progressing our ideas of sex and sexuality, and also maybe how it may have, how your relationship with them and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that when I started writing the book, I'd done some illegal drugs. I'd never done any psychedelics. And because while I was writing the book, first of all, pretty much every community that I talk about would talk to me in some way about their use of psychedelics. And then there were a few people in the book that, like, that's the cathartic moment for them is they're on mushrooms and they fall in love or whatever.
What about the orgasmic meditation people?
Yeah. It wasn't like, they never, I'm making an assumption.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
no, Nicole talks about having lived in an acid house. I don't
All
even know
right.
what that
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
They all went to Burning Man.
Okay.
All the pornographers went to Burning Man.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I got
the reason
that,
I went
I
to
got
Burning
that.
Man is because every one of these people went to
Right.
Burning Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
But, and then I was having this, like, thing with the 1960s where I was just kind of like, where did my ideas come from? And I was just having this sort of reckoning with the 60s, which I always tell people if I was, like, a middle-aged man, it would be my war, like, the thing that I read all the books about.
The Swedish Academy is similarly with Bob.
I know. No, I felt great today.
What's your favorite Dylan record? I think they want to know.
Oh no. Now you're really
Come on.
putting me on the spot. I just like the early ones. Today what I was listening to for most of the day was actually just the soundtrack to the movie, the Chronicles movie. Which I like. I mean, my favorite Dylan songs are probably Song to Woody, which I just find like really poignant.
I'm more of a
And I
Rolling
love,
Thunder review kind of guy. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that real where he's got
And
Bowie's
I was
guitarist
listening
playing
to
with him.
some Boots of Spanish Leather today.
Yeah, I'm. Tonight I'll be staying here with you. Whitney, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm curious, what made you want to write a book about sex, or even I guess it kind of came off some of these pieces you wrote, but you still, for something like you seemed like you didn't watch a lot of porn even before you started researching. So it seems to me like someone who wasn't that into these things, and then you decided to write a book. I'm just curious. And then in retrospect, do you think that maybe having this reporter or writer persona helped you engage with these things maybe you secretly wanted to engage with more?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, everybody has to think about these things, even if you're a repressed person, you're thinking about them. We're humans. But yeah, I mean, when I first, basically what happened was I read The Neighbor's Wife by Gay Talese, and I just was really taken by the book and by its scope and by what it was able to accomplish in capturing like this massive story. It's about, it's a cultural history of the sexual revolution. And then, so when I was kind of trying to come up with book ideas so that I could like quit my job and be the writer that I wanted to be, you know, I met with my agent, Edward Orloff, who's back there, and we were both like, yeah, we both just sat there listing other people that we knew that were way more comfortable writing about this stuff, and like were, you know, tons of writers that we could both think of that were more out there than I was. But yeah, I don't know, it just was like the thing that felt urgent to me, and I felt like my shyness in some ways would be an asset, because I don't think any of the, you know, many readers are the ones that are the most out there, or, you know, there's a range of people, whatever. So that was, yeah, and then as I write in the book, journalism was an alibi for me in the beginning to do things that I never would have done. Journalism, California, you know, even something like Burning Man, I don't know, I needed an excuse to be there, yeah.
So I think,
Not you, not
So it
yours.
was fun.
Oh, we gotta.
I think we can do one more question.
Okay, Frank.
So many, probably most of the technologies you describe in your book are basically available to anybody who wants to use it, right? Like the age of the internet, you can just access them. And I think one of the few criticisms that were made of the book is that it tends to focus on a very narrow demographic study.
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm curious if you could do this book again, would there be any like extra things you would want to tack on, or like if you're doing another book, would there be other like areas of society you'd be interested in investigating?
Yeah, I mean, the problem when I was writing, first of all, I kind of like took to heart Judith Butler's thing about the myth of the coalition, that you can get one of everybody and arrive at a complete whole. And maybe that's a cop-out to say, but that was one thing. The other thing was that I didn't want to instrumentalize anybody because of their background or their race or their gender to like check off a box or something. It didn't feel right to me. Maybe that's also a cop-out. You know, at the end of the day, the reason why I went so subjective with it and personal was to try to avoid making any universal claims, and to make it very clear who I was, like the color of my skin, my sexual orientation, the kind of, you know, education I'd had in my class were, I think, are pretty evident. And so yeah, that allows it to be seen as this like really narrow thing, but it's also, hopefully in that way, people can just like not have to contend with it if it has nothing to do with their lives. You know, one thing about internet dating that I think a lot of people already know is that it prejudices and in porn, in all this stuff, like people's prejudices become really apparent in the data, and even, for example, for me to internet date now as a 35-year-old woman almost like wouldn't be worth it. It's not that it's not worth it, but like your stats get different. They change, and who is searching for you changes. And you know, all of these things are embedded in the technology, but I felt I had a whole thing about that, and ultimately felt like Christian Rudder did that in his book, and it wasn't necessarily helpful for me to do it in mine.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
I just need to send a Whitney and
I'm gonna have a smoke and I'll come down and get that present.
I haven't, but I'm going the next
There's the.
No, it's in November. Yeah, no, I'm in the middle of the crazy.
Let's say hi, Joey's done.
Like go to the actually original place. So that place is BYOB. Okay, so yeah, like here's the
What do you think of her?
I love
She's great. Like I have such, like she's in the gallery in Bottom.
adore her. There's not there, but I'm sure they're not there now. Wait, Joey!
I just wanted to say what's up with my
like we got like a very hot latte. That upset. Like definitely it's not to be on my legs anymore. I wore my heat tech leggings already because I was like, I don't know.
Well, that was like basically I was like, that's why I first started. I didn't I might be meaning seeing you. Bye-bye. I can't spend I mean, I can help it. A week if I take Yeah, no, It's set in a Game of Thrones type world, where it's, defense and dragons. You want to have a book club?
Bye-bye, this week.
I'm doing well. Yeah. No, I'm just it's like yeah, I mean, it's all happening. All that stuff happens out there. It's all centralized. Right. There was like there's a New York Times article. They kind of hinted at that. I mean, part of the reason we're here is kind of like it's really fun. It doesn't sound, but I've only been there 2 days now, so I can't. It doesn't sound. Yeah. Hi.
This half and the other half is over there.
No, we don't actually. Yeah. Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, most of what they spend their time doing is trying to find out more about individual voters so they can more accurately target No, actually, like, I'm just working on their, like, right now, so essentially, like, keeping track of, like, news organizations or things about it. Yeah, it's
like the content of what they're saying, just like who is talking about it. I don't know. I can't really tell how like my work is directly connected to campaign objectives, but yeah. And there is a lot of stuff in terms of they're now very aware that like this is not work you do just like for one election and then abandon. That like if you do a really good job of keeping data and organizing it, then this becomes like an asset not just for like the next Democratic president